What's up, everybody? Can you guys hear me? Awesome.
Good.
Perfect.
Right.
So there was a rumor going around Emerge that if we did a great job opening up for Pitbull, that you're going to go on tour and get to open for all of his acts.
I've been told this qualifies as opening for Pitbull, right? I think. That's what I told my kids. All right.
Cool. So we're going to have a fun, casual conversation. I think that people learn the most from storytelling. So to get started, I want everybody to hear a little bit more about your story. Rob started off as a federal prosecutor, ended up working at eBay as general counsel through the PayPal acquisition as well, and then also was the chief ethics officer of Airbnb. You have one of the most craziest unconventional paths to where you ended up at, so I want them to kind of understand a little bit more about your story.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Justis. I started out as a federal prosecutor in Northern Virginia, bank robberies, drug dealers, and espionage cases. Any of those who follow espionage out there, I was the prosecutor in the Aldrich James case, among some others. But I got tired of putting people in jail. I found it to be a pretty negative profession in a lot of ways, even though it's necessary.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get involved in business. I always loved business. The only problem was I'd go out and apply to jobs, and they'd say, wow, you're a really good prosecutor. We don't prosecute people here. So it became a journey, really, to find a business that could understand what I might be able to bring to the table. And Justis, I bet I applied to about 200 positions before finally I ended up applying to this small little company in Northern California that I used. I was an early internet adopter because AOL, a company some of you all may remember, was in my jurisdiction in Northern Virginia. So I started using the internet, and one of the little companies I started using was eBay. So I applied to eBay by email, blind, to jobs@ebay.com. Told them they were going to have fraud and illegal items and regulatory issues. And they called me the next day, and I moved to California, and that got my career started.
Wow, crazy story. I heard you also applied to Taco Bell.
Oh yeah, I applied to Taco Bell, and they told me no. It could have been different. I could have been dealing with Crunch Wraps right now instead.
So I really love analogies, anybody who knows me, and I remember you were having a conversation where you were discussing the analogy between a thermometer and a thermostat when it came down to business ethics and corporate governance.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about the difference and how you look at it?
Sure. You know, after my time at eBay, I ended up going to a company called Chegg in the education space, and then I became general counsel at Airbnb. And, you know, spent a lot of time thinking about culture. You know, when people ask me, you know, why is Airbnb so successful, I think a big part of Airbnb's success is there's a lot of focus on the culture of the company and driving integrity into the culture of what we do. And you know, I did some studying, really. The CEO, Brian Chesky, the founder, we started talking about how we could avoid the sort of problems that other tech companies were facing with integrity. The things that were, I think, really wrecking brands out there. And he sent me off. He said, go big, but don't be afraid to do some things different. And we ended up building an integrity program, actually, at the company that it surprised me, but the employees really loved it. It resonated with their values. And one of the things that I learned as we were sort of going through this journey of driving integrity into the culture is the importance of leadership. You know, it is a scientific fact, I learned, that integrity is contagious. And so is a lack of integrity. And leaders are the carriers. Little do you realize it as a leader, but employees are watching everything that you say and everything that you do. Your words and actions really have tremendous implications that spread throughout the company. And the analogy that I was taught was leaders are the thermostat of a company, not the thermometer. You know, a thermometer takes the temperature of a room, but a thermostat sets it. By their words and by their actions, leaders basically have their hand on the thermostat, and they're creating a climate that everyone in the company is living in and are affected by. And as a leader, I think you have to appreciate and understand the power of your words, the power of your actions, and how they really spread all across the company and impact the way that people behave in that company.
So, you know, I grew up super poor, and there's a really big misconception where people have to, you know, they believe that you have to lie, cheat, and steal to make it to the top. You got to cut corners to make money. after meeting you, hearing more about your story, and luckily being able to get some of your knowledge, I realized I couldn't be further from the truth. And most companies that have ethics and integrity actually outperform others. So I know that you guys were going through a really hard time with payments in the early days of eBay, right? It started off with checks and then maybe some wires. And you wanted to solve that problem, even though you didn't have to. You wanted to buy PayPal to be able to internalize the payment system for eBay itself. So can you talk a little bit about that long-term, short-term trade-off and also some other stories that kind of apply to that?
Sure. I mean, eBay was really a fascinating company to think about integrity in business. You know, when I got to the company, started there were 170 employees, and they were selling guns, kidneys, about anything you could imagine you could find on eBay, and it didn't always reflect well on the company. And you know, for a while, our internal philosophy was, if it's legal, we should sell it, right? And you know, because that obviously you want to expand and have the broadest possible market you can, and you want to make the most money that you can. So if it's legal, sell it. And then one day, we started coming across some challenges. I remember one day they would bring me all of the issues around whether we should sell something or not. And they came to me with a guy who had gone onto the site and put on something rather unusual. He had gone to the Vatican, Justis, and he had gotten communion with the Pope. And when he got the wafer, instead of putting the wafer in his mouth like he was supposed to, he takes the wafer and puts it in his pocket and then goes home and puts it on eBay. And this started generating some customer complaints, and that came to my desk, and I said, well, you know, our mantra really is if it's legal, it should be sold, and the Pope gave him the wafer, so, you know, why not? Let it go. And that turned out to be a mistake, Justis. Next thing we knew, the CEO, Meg Whitman, called me in and wanted to know why there was a global boycott of eBay by the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church didn't agree with the assessment and felt that we were literally selling the body of Christ. And I wasn't Catholic, so it wasn't something that really I could fully appreciate. So really one lesson I got was, you know, when it comes to decisions of gray around integrity, it's really good to get people from different backgrounds and different cultures involved, right? I didn't fully appreciate the significance of the wafer, not being Catholic, but soon after that, we formed a group internally that would weigh in on the different factors here so that we could have a better understanding of sensitivities. And that's when the company really first started looking at you know, the integrity of the particular items. And just because you can sell something doesn't mean that you necessarily should sell something. That came to light a little later on when one of our board members, Howard Schultz from Starbucks, came to a board meeting. And he had just come from Europe, where he had visited you know, Germany and some of the concentration camps. And he walked into the board meeting and said, there are items of Nazi memorabilia on the eBay website, you know, German uniforms and the like from World War II. He said, I will not be involved with any company that is profiting from the sale of Nazi memorabilia. So therefore, either the items come down or I'm off the board. And that act, I think, on Howard Schultz's part of really speaking out about right and wrong got us thinking more about should we sell anything that's legal, or should we be thinking about what we want attached to our brand? And I think we began to realize that if it had the eBay frame around it and the eBay logo, then it was, in effect, in many ways, ours, and it reflected on us. So, you know, we ultimately had to make the decision that we were not going to sell those items. And we started thinking about really things, I think, in a little broader sense about whether you should sell something or not and how it reflected on your company. And, you know, look, Justis, it meant we lost a little bit of revenue, but the amount of revenue, I think, was minor compared to having values and having soul as a company and standing for something that you believe in. And I think, you know, what we learned ultimately is when you do that, the benefits to the company far outweigh the negatives. And in fact, you end up making more money in the long run because your values resonate with employees, they resonate with customers. There was a recent study by Ethisphere who found that the world's most ethical companies, as measured by a number of neutral criteria, they actually outperform their competitors and they outperform the stock market. I think so often we're all told, Rob, this ethical, this integrity stuff, that's nice, but we're talking about business. We're in business.
I need to make
right?
money.
And my response is, I'm talking about business too, right? And companies need a North Star. And I think all of you are leaders at companies out there right now. You need to ask the question, why does my business exist? What's my mission? What is the reason that my company is good for the world? And if your answer is to make money, then I think that's the wrong North Star for you, because you ultimately won't be as successful as if you need a mission that is inspiring to employees and to customers. I think it actually drives better decisions for the long run, and you'll actually be more financially successful if you think about your business in that way.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm so glad you brought that up, because you came and spoke we had an accelerator, and you came and spoke to some of our companies in our cohort, and you were telling, honestly, one of the most impactful stories that I ever heard when it comes to business. And you were saying that, you came into the room at Airbnb and Brian Chesky had a number on the wall on a whiteboard. And you're like, what is this number? And it was bookings. Yeah. So you had a conversation with him about finding the North Star. Can you talk a little bit about that and how it changed Airbnb and what you really did outside of just bookings?
Yeah, one thing that leaders need to think about is something I call the number on the wall. And the importance of numbers to business can't be overestimated. I used to think when I first got into the business world from being a prosecutor that businesses would count what they did. And what I came to learn is it's actually the opposite. Businesses actually do what they count. So whatever it is you count in business, it actually ends up driving your behavior, because competitive people see a number and they want to make it better. They want to make this number, they want to make it a bigger number. They have a deadline, they want to meet that deadline. And people inside of a company are extremely motivated by numbers. What Justis is talking about was my first week at the company. I walked into a company meeting and the number on the wall was 200 million. I'm like, what's that number, Brian? Well, 200 million, Rob, is the number of nights that we want to hit this year. And everybody in the company is lined up around 200 million nights. Every meeting you went to, 200 million. What's your team doing? Oh, we're working on 200 million this way and that way. And I thought, well, that's a fine thing to be thinking about. And one day, Justis, I was looking at the site and I noticed that we had some hosts on Airbnb whose ratings weren't really good. On a 5-star basis, they're getting 3 stars, which is not very good at all, 3.5. And if you read the comments, I started reading comments that the places weren't clean, that the pictures were misleading, that the hosts weren't really friendly in greeting the guests. So I go into the team that's responsible for this and I say, why are these hosts on the site? These people are killing our business in the long run. If people are going and having a bad experience there, why are they on the site? They should be off the site. And I'll never forget, the leader of the team looked at me and said, Rob, you're right, but we need to hit 200 million nights, and even a bad night is still a night. And that really drove home the power of putting a number in front of people. Because if you put a number in front of your team, they will strive to hit that number to please you, and they will put that number above everything else, even doing what they know in their heart is the right thing to do. And by the way, Justis, you see this behind so many corporate scandals. At Boeing, right? There's the number to hit is the deadline, that the plane has to go out by this date, right? Or at Volkswagen, we have to have 0 emissions in a diesel vehicle. You have to hit the number 0. Or at Wells Fargo, we have to have 6 accounts per person, right? So the story at Wells Fargo was that
the fake accounts.
The head of the company learned that the most valuable customers at the bank were the ones that had a lot of accounts with the bank. Credit card, mortgage, checking, savings. So he came up with the saying, 8 is great. And he pushed everybody in the company to get 8 accounts per account holder at Wells Fargo. And it's really interesting. The sales team was pushed so hard. The head of the sales team told everybody in the room when it came to increasing the number of accounts, he said, you're going to hit this number or you're going to be working at McDonald's next month, right? So guess what happened? They hit the number, right? And how did they hit the number? They made up accounts. They opened accounts for customers that the customers didn't even ask for, didn't even know they had. And it made the bookings number, the numbers look really good for the first quarter, right? And then people started to dig in, the customers started complaining, and the entire thing collapsed into a major scandal that had tremendous consequences for the brand. So I think the lesson is that numbers are a powerful motivator for business, but you have to be very careful about what you count and realize that there can be negative consequences if you're not very careful about counting the right thing.
I think my dog still has an account with Wells Fargo, actually. So yeah, to leave everybody here, I think that you have, invaluable knowledge. What are some great resources, some great pieces of advice to leave everybody here with today as far as business ethics, intentional integrity, and corporate governance?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing to realize is that as a leader in a company, you're responsible. It's on you. You're the thermostat, and you can't think of ethics and integrity as something that's separate from business. It's actually a key driver for your business. We had some terrific learnings around that at Airbnb, and I wrote a book about it called Intentional Integrity. So if those of you who are interested in the subject, it's available at fine bookstores everywhere. But I urge you, no matter what, to take it on and recognize that it's a responsibility of leadership and needs to be in all of your OKRs.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rob. It's been a great conversation.
Thanks
and
for having
as always,
me,
it's always good seeing you.
Okay, man. Take care.